service industry. A strategic leader with extensive experience of leading and developing organizations and functions to maximize their potential. Now, with more than 15 years of experience in investment banking, technology, data, foreign exchange, commodities, and securities trading, and he possesses a strong operation and strategic management experience as well as external data management and analytic know-how. And he's also the founder and CEO of Trynkle. And today he's gonna share the topic on working from home and working from anywhere. You know, with the pandemic ongoing, right? It's really a very huge topic right here. And post any questions you have right now in the chat box if you have any. And I welcome all of you to invite the speaker here. And the speaker is none other than Rish Tandapani. Rish, your show now.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. Thanks everyone for joining us. Good afternoon. Hope we're not taking too many people's lunch times. Let me just share my screen with everyone. Here we go. Guys, again, thanks for joining us. I hope everyone can hear me well. Today's topic is an interesting one. It's probably a year too late for a lot of you. A lot of you have probably wanted to have this type of conversation maybe much earlier on during the pandemic or before the pandemic even. But we're going to touch a lot of things that I think are still really relevant and hopefully a lot of you can relate to. So it's about working from home. I presume the majority of you are working from home. A lot of you may be working from anywhere. It may not be your home, it may be a hotel, it may be another country, maybe your parents' place, etc. So we're going to get into the technicalities of that. And the slides today are very much from a perspective of theory and helping you guys spot things that maybe you didn't traditionally spot. And we're going to supply the slides after the session. So don't need to make notes or worry about anything. My tactic is I'm going to try to relate some personal experiences to working from home. And I'm definitely going to take you through the more psychological and mental health aspects of working from home, which often get overlooked by employers in particular, because they just naturally think everything is honky-dory and everything is kind of working perfectly. So this is a bit about what we're going to talk about, the evolution of working from home, talking about the new normal and how the new working life looks like for a lot of people, how you handle your relationships during this period, which is a super critical point, and also redefining your employee experience, which essentially means, you know, how do I get the same amount of credit and the same amount of work and the same amount of money and the same amount of success working from home as I do normally in the office. So a bit about me. Look, a lot of you know me and can check me out on LinkedIn. Andrew gave you a bit of an overview. I've had a lot of experience with setting up working from home environments, disaster recovery requirements, working from home from Friday environments, things like that pre-COVID. I managed a pretty large global team and we had to facilitate working from home in some capacity to help people with work-life balance, one. Also because we saw it as a coming trend, not with COVID, but generally with people wanting to work from home. And thirdly, because you want to give your employees as much opportunity as possible, and working from home is a type of opportunity that benefits some and people want to leverage off, especially in the age of maternity leave, paternity leave, in the age of spending more time with your kids, in the age of spending. So there's a lot of corporate influence into what I'm going to tell you. And if anyone's got any questions about my specific background, by all means ask. We are actually at the moment, Trynkle, my company, is actually helping about 3 or 4 companies across Asia with their working from home policies and culture. And that's a really important word, which I want you guys to take away from this entire session, culture. So just a few statistics, right, on working from home. Look, you can read this for yourselves, but the essence of this is it's grown, okay? This isn't just a new thing because of COVID. COVID has accelerated it to probably a reasonably unprecedented level, but actually it's a pretty long-standing trend. If you look at some of the bigger companies like Google, like Apple, even some of the big consultancies, the Boston Consulting Group, things like that, they've been promoting remote work for a long period of time, predominantly because they've been looking to save money. It's easier to ask people to work from home or work remotely than it is to come to the office from a cost perspective. You don't have to pay rent, you don't have to pay for fancy chairs, you don't have to pay for internet connections, things like that. So the statistics there should show you that actually COVID is a part of this, but not the biggest part of this. This was always going to happen, and we've just been made to think about it more. I think the even more important question or statistic on this slide that I want you guys to take away is the two on the right hand side. So 82% of employees would like to work remotely for 1 day per week. Okay, nothing special about that. I think we all like the idea of having a bit of freedom, a bit of understanding showed by our employer to work wherever we want, whenever we want. The more interesting to me is the counter of that. 90% of employees still want access to the office environment. Now, what does that show me? That actually shows me that there's still a bit of indecision between the general working workplace and the working environment. There's a lot of people who love the idea of, being promoted, but they don't necessarily think about the additional work that comes with the promotion, the additional responsibility, the additional ownership, the additional signatories that you have to give, things like that. And it's the same thing with working from home. Employees, I think, are in a position right now where they're willing to give a lot more freedom in terms of remote work, but still there's an attachment to the working environment. And we're going to analyze that quite heavily today, why people are still attached to that working environment, why people like to go to the physical office, and what actual benefits does that breed. And if we can come up with a hybrid solution, which you can go to your employers with, or if any of your managers or HR officers in the audience, you'll be able to relate this down to your employees later. So that's a bit about the overview of the whole remote work environment. Now, people ask me to define working from home, and I found this really cool quote. It was actually first written by someone who works at Tesla, I believe. And it's an interesting quote because this is exactly how the world saw working from home probably less than 18 months ago and before. The ability to do your job, do a good job, and do it in your sweatpants, essentially. So that basically means that idea that you're creating a casual environment at home, and we like it. And I thought I'd open up today's talk with a video. For any of you who haven't seen this movie, I recommend you go and see it straight away tonight. It's an amazing movie. It's called Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and it's about a boy that basically skips school. That's all. And he says a few really important things in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Incredible. One of the worst performances of my career, and they never doubted it for a second. How could I possibly be expected to handle school on a day like this? This is my 9th sick day this semester. It's getting pretty tough coming up with new illnesses. If I go for 10, I'm probably gonna have to barf up a lung. So I better make this one count. The key to faking out the parents is the clammy hands. It's a good non-specific symptom. I'm a big believer in it. A lot of people will tell you that a good phony fever is a deadlock, but
I'll pause it there. I suggest all of you go and watch the remaining 2 or 3 minutes of this video later. Now, the reason I showed you this video is because it goes in to my next point quite readily. Ferris Bueller wants to not go to school. He wants to take a day off. He's faking it. He's basically taking, carrying out and doing his own symptoms so that his parents believe his scenario, and he just doesn't want to go to school. Now, for those of you who are old enough in the audience, you'll realize that working from home used to be like that. For me, working from home in my 20s used to be like that. It was this constant struggle to beg my boss or my manager, I need a day where I just want to work from home. I've got some things to do in the house. I'm just tired, or, I now have a laptop that the office has given me. It makes sense that I work from home. And it used to be this luxury, right? And we all viewed it as a luxury. And every time we were told, hey, we can work from home, I'm pretty sure the majority of you were like, well, you know what? Longer weekend, an extra day off, a few more hours to myself. I can sleep in, don't have to worry about driving. Maybe get to spend more time with my kids, get to walk the dog, all these things. And that happened for a long period of time. And organizations actually pushed back on that a lot. So I had a lot of managers come to me and say, hey, well, Rich, you don't need to work from home. There's no reason for you to work from home. You're not working from home. We need you in the office. You need to attend meetings. You need to sign stuff off. So, you're not working from home. So the idea of working from home as a luxury stood for a very, very, very long period of time. In fact, some of the big employers out there, the Googles, the Apples, the Facebooks of the world, one of their biggest selling points to employees was actually, hey, we allow you to work anywhere. We allow you to work remotely. Then suddenly, we have been made to question, how does that fit in? Because around about March 2020, all employers pretty much said, look, great, you've got your job, continue, but you have to do it from home. It's not safe to be in the office. It's not safe to commute. Our office isn't prepared for COVID or mitigating any risks regarding COVID. So we had to decide, on how we feel about working from home. And the initial adrenaline attached to that was pretty simple. It was like, well, let's go work from home. I'm going to renew my Netflix subscription, and I'm going to spend a lot more time with my family and eat what I want and do what I want, and things are all great. However, over the last year and a bit, we've realized that working from home isn't as seamless or as easy as we all like to think it is. And one of the major reasons behind that is because we're not prepared for an elongated period of working from home. So now we ask ourselves, is it a chore now? Or is it something that we have to get used to? Is it something that's stressing me out? Or is it something that I really genuinely day-to-day love? And, you know, we've all taken steps. We've all built our own offices. We've all got new comfy chairs. We've all got, you know, plant plots like the picture that we've put into the room to make it all comfortable. But where are we? You know, has working from home lost its charm? Are we all ready to go back to the office, or are we looking for some hybrid solution in 2022, 2023, where we can do 50-50, or we can orientate our lives according to the way we want to do it? Because believe me, if you are working from home all the time, it will lose its thrill. And one of my easy counteractions to that is going and working from a coffee shop, going and working from the lounge downstairs, going and working from a park. But that's not always feasible for everyone, especially those with you with commitments and families and things like that. It's not easy, and as a result, there is no solution there. So we need to understand, you know, where are you in that maturity curve? Has it lost its charm with you? Are you willing to make small changes to make your working from home environment even better, or are you actually ready to go back to the office? And there's some conditions and there's some kind of general rules about working from home as a whole. You know, this idea that work life, as much as sometimes we hate it, it is structured. It's structured. For most of us, it's a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 7. For those who work shifts, there is a shift. We have a specific work desk, or we have at least a hot desk that we go to on a regular basis. We have someone else's printer that we use. The hours are pretty much fixed. We know when we're going to have our lunch. We know we're going to have our afternoon tea. We know when we're going to have our toilet breaks. And there's no need to juggle family, work, and personal needs, because during that period of time, your obligation, contractually mandated, is to your employer. And as a result, there is structure to it. Your mental health, you don't necessarily think about it as significantly as you do when you're working from home, because you associate it with work. Or why am I stressed? Oh, but it's because of work. Or why am I tired? Oh, it's because I've been in the office the whole day. Performance. Your performance is directly linked to the hours that you work. It's directly linked to the meetings that you attend, the emails that you're writing, the meetings that you have with your manager, the HR system that you log into. So you're going from a completely structured world to a completely unstructured world, where anything can happen, anything does really happen, and ultimately our ability to deal with it depends on how well we manage it. So these are really, really important things to understand. And for some people, fluidity and lack of structure works. For someone like me, it's perfect. I love it. I thrive on it. But for some people, they need that structure. And when they were imposed or they were forced to work from home, suddenly they found themselves not being able to necessarily deal with certain issues in a way that they traditionally would during the organization. So think about this. Think about whether you're a structured person, whether you're an unstructured person, how do you want to go going forward, and whether your company and your family and friends and relatives can help you on that journey. So this is a pretty obvious slide. You'll see some overlap between benefits and challenges, which I'll get into. But essentially, you know, what are we trying to get from working from home? We know what the employer wants. The employer wants to essentially give you a reasonably safe environment that deals with all the SOPs and propaganda associated with COVID, but they also want to reduce costs. It's easier for them when you're at home, especially if they don't have to provide you with the infrastructure of logging in, because we all have our personal Wi-Fi connections. You know, for the employer, it also means that there's that lack of people on a visible environment that they have to deal with, and that causes a reduction in office politics, essentially. And that's important to employers because they don't have to deal with you face to face. And if you're ever a C-level manager or someone really senior within the organization, they will openly admit that actually having that constant face-to-face interaction with people actually is quite a tough, stressful process. So these are some of the benefits from working from home. Location independence. We can work from Hawaii, we can work from New York, we can work from Malaysia, we can work from Singapore, we can work from Hong Kong. That has increased. So there are a lot of benefits about working from home. And we need to make sure that we do see the benefits, because those benefits is what makes us drive through on this whole initiative. It makes us see that on the maturity curve, we're still happy to work from home and we're not desperate to go back from the office. One of the important things I would say, one of the important benefits of working home is that the third point, Flexibility in creating a schedule that suits you. Now, this is an uber critical point, which I will go into a bit more in detail. Most things in our life, they fare a lot better when there's structure attached to them. When you're cooking, if you follow a recipe, it tends to go better. When you're doing a school run and you take your kids to school, if you know what time they need to get up, go to school, blah, 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 and there's a schedule, it fits better. Movie schedules fit better, things like that. It all just seamlessly works well. And the same applies to working from home, right? You have flexibility in that schedule. You have the ability to say, I'm going to have my toilet break whenever I want. I'm going to be able to eat lunch whenever I want or cook whenever I want. But you have to know how to do that. You have to know how to create a schedule that is flexible and works well with you and works well with the work that you're trying to carry out. So that's a really important benefit and takeaway that I want you guys to take. On the challenges side, you'll see the most important for me is work-life balance, okay? A lot of people automatically, and I've included it as a point on the benefit side, think that you have increased work-life balance because you're working from home. You have increased work life, okay? That's all. And what do I mean by that? I mean, there is more of your life involved with your work on a daily basis. It doesn't necessarily mean you have balance. And it's for you to ascertain whether you have that balance. Now, it's possible, and in an ideal situation, if you cope well, that your work-life balance reaches its most optimal point when you're working from home. And that relies on you introducing schedules, rules, and structures that help you do that. But for a lot of people, and I would say probably the majority of people, especially now after about a year of working from home or working from anywhere, they're really, really struggling with work-life balance. And found a lot of them are finding that stressful environment of dealing with friends, family, relatives, grandma, grandparents, dogs, cats, all a bit too much, as well as carrying out their day-to-day job. And because they haven't really drawn the lines between what is work and what is life and where the harmony should lie, they always fall into these traps. And it's natural. People get on each other's nerves. People are demanding when you're at home. There's more chores and obligations to do. So we need to talk a bit about work-life balance and how to optimize that. And we're going to get onto that a bit later. Employee mental health and physical health is obviously a key challenge when people are working from home. For me as a manager, when I could look into the eyes of my 600 members of staff or 500 members of staff, it was easier to tell whether they were happy or not. I could see I could sense whether John was having a problem at home. I could sense whether Jane was tired. I could sense whether Andrew was, happy. I could sense whether Jason was sad. And that office environment enabled me as a manager to come to the fore and see those things. But when someone's working from home, the mental health side in particular is something that is quite difficult for me to dissect because my only interaction with them is over WhatsApp, some communication app, or on video through Zoom or Google Meet or something. And those, you can make yourself up much more in those environments. So we need to think about mental and physical health of this side. And for those of you who've got questions on this later on, please do ask them, because I think this is one of the biggest challenges that people have. This idea that their mental health has become secondary because they're working from home, because they're scared to tell their employer that they're having mental health challenges, because they're worried that their employer is just going to say, well, you're working from home, everything should be easier. But that's not the way it works. And we need to talk about that. So for those of you who have questions on that, please ask. It leads itself to this idea of feeling isolated. For those of you who don't have anyone at home, you can often get self-esteem and loneliness issues. So, you're isolated because you're forced to work from home. There's a couple of key points at the bottom as well. Collaboration and culture. We mentioned culture before, but the idea that you are not collaborating as much as you would working from home as you would in the office. This is really important, especially for those of you in very team-based, idea-generative industries, such as marketing, for instance, where you're used to whiteboarding or doodling or having big team meetups and stuff. And a video conference is a great place for this, but it's not an optimal replacement for this, because ultimately things like tone, body language, etc., aren't easily readable on a video conference as they are in person. Not to mention that the energy given over such technological mediums is much more reduced than it would be physically. And an interesting statistic here is if you look at the Gen Zs and the millennials, the digital adopters, the ones who we expect to be perfect and amazing at working from home because of technological evolution, they're actually the ones finding it hardest. And it's a weird problem going on with a lot of young organizations at the moment. The Gen Zs are finding it very tough to collaborate, feel informed and communicate with their peers over this technology, because they're really, really in need of that human contact. You know, they haven't been long enough in their work life to understand and analyze emotions and psychologies. So they're finding it a bit different. And that's one of the things that we work with in Trynkle quite a lot, helping the youngsters navigate this new norm, this new working life. So those are some of the challenges and benefits. So what is this new normal within the workplace? The honest answer is I don't know. Okay, I think it depends on your organization. I think it depends on your industry. I think it will depend how the rest of this year goes, really. If you look at some of the bigger companies out there, some have made some really dramatic moves to ensure complete remote work. But some of them, some of the big banks have said, you know what, no, we want to get back in the office as soon as possible. And that's based a lot on the energy, as I mentioned earlier, of having everyone together in an office. Sales tend to go up. Productivity also tends to go up, and people have clarity on what what they want to achieve and what they want to do. So when I talk about the new normal, take it with a pinch of salt and take it and frame it according to your industry and your organization. Obviously, a critical part of this is remote working. Okay, so the idea of not working in an office. Okay, and remote working is really critical to the new normal and the new workplace, because at some point in your career now, maybe even later, you're going to have to remote work. The way automation is running, the way property prices are driving costs in offices, you will have to remote work at some stage, even if you're not now. And if you are now, you need to get used to it faster rather than slower. And one of the reasons I bring this up is because a lot of people just think of it as a temporary thing at the moment. They're thinking, you know what, once COVID's out the window, once we've got our double jabs, everyone's going to go back to the office. Once there's herd immunity, they're going to force us back in, and remote work won't necessarily be a thing of it. But for a lot of you, your big bosses may decide that it's going to be the way going forward, and you need to prepare yourself for that. You need to make sure your environment caters to be as optimal in that condition as possible. Virtual meetings, really important, because so when I was a manager, I had guys who were really good in meetings, guys and girls who were really, really good in meetings, and guys and girls who were really, really bad in meetings. So the guys and girls who were really, really good in meetings, they were to the point. They used to just go bang, bang, bang. The meeting had an agenda, an objective, and we used to make decisions. The people who are not so good at meetings, they kind of just waffle, they ramble, they see it as a community gathering, they see it as a kind of friend zone type thing, and the meetings didn't really go well. So now, within this new normal, we need to understand how impactful virtual meetings can be. And the answer can be not impactful at all. And the overuse of virtual meetings is something that I always make people wary of. You know, virtual meetings are not just to show your face on a screen, to show that you are logged onto a computer and could potentially be doing work. In fact, meetings are no indication of productivity at all. Meetings are decision-making forums. Meetings are actually where project decisions, project closures, project validations get done. The actual productivity is actually done outside of meetings. So whatever virtual meeting setup you have at the moment within this working from home, new normal environment, go and carefully understand whether it's optimal or it's not. And if it's not optimal, start speaking to your peers, your staff, your bosses, and start understanding what is that happy environment, that happy balance that we can have between having productive virtual meetings versus actually spending time working behind the screen, which is what we really essentially should be doing most of the time. And I think a lot of people have fallen into that trap of having meeting after meeting after meeting. Their calendar looks full. There's no white space there. And okay, our job's done. We've done something today. And then when you come to the end of the week, you realize actually, we've just talked a lot, but we haven't actually done anything that contributes to the completion of the project. And this is just as important for junior members of staff as it is for senior members of staff. And I think there is a big carry forward of a lot of wasted virtual meeting time, which we need to address. So think about that. And if you're an employee who's very worried about the amount of time you're spending virtually on meetings, or that you're not contributing to those meetings effectively, have a conversation with your boss. There are other ways. There's so much technology in place now. There's voice notes, there's Slack, there's PPTs you can create on the side. There's so much else out there that can demonstrate your effectiveness and your productivity. So don't worry about this be all and end all of having a virtual meeting. And one of the things I would advise those of you in HR is to look at your virtual meeting policy. If someone in your organization is doing 4 hours of back-to-back virtual meetings, there is a huge problem with the company. Not only from an individual standpoint where the toll on them is significant, but from a company standpoint, did I really hire that person to be in back-to-back meetings for 4 to 5 to 6 hours? And I guarantee the answer is no. So think about your virtual meeting strategy and how you want to how much time you're invested in it. Okay, and that can be really simple things as well, like, am I dressing up for my virtual meetings too much? Because when you go to the office, you probably just put your scarf around you, or you probably just put your blazer on and you go into the meeting. But at home, there's a lot of people who have a tendency to structure it. I'm going to move my cup to the left, and I'm going to comb my hair to the right, and things. So think about how much time you're actually investing in this virtual meeting versus the productivity and the output of the meeting itself. The redefinition of work we're going to come to a bit later on. Essentially, as employees now, you have the right to say that my work life and my idea of a normal working day is changing. And you have to be vocal about this. You have to be able to go to your managers, your HR in particular, and say, look, now that I'm working from home, now that I've got the kids bugging me in the background, now that I don't have the fastest internet connection in the world, now that I don't have the blue screen to help my eyes protect against computer light, I want things to change. And you have to have these open, honest conversations with your employees and your HR to help them understand what it is that you're actually going through at home or wherever you're working. Because I guarantee, and I'm a good example of this, when I was a COO working at home, I had my own office. The company gave me 3 screens to work from home. They gave me the fancy mouse pad. They gave me the chair that gamers use at the Olympics. They gave me all these things. And not everyone was lucky enough to have that. And I'm certainly not lucky enough to have that now in my own consultancy. So start allowing people to visualize what your working from home experience is like. That way, they're more likely to be empathetic and understanding to the troubles, challenges, and opportunities that might come from working from home. So redefining your work, maybe your hours might change. Maybe how you do your phone calls may change. Maybe you want to do them virtually online through Zoom or Slack or Skype, whatever, instead of on the phone. Maybe you want to spend an hour every day working from a cafeteria. Have that conversation with your peers, with your managers, with your HR, and start to redefine your nature of work and the processes associated with you, because they will have a knock-on impact to everyone in the company. And ultimately, companies are working towards that kind of endeavor anyway. So, try to understand that you're not just a cog within the workplace. You are one cog within the workplace who has a mind and has a voice. So use that. The next slide is, I'll leave it out there for you guys to read and obviously take away with you. But there's some key things that as employees, I think we forget about when we're working from home, okay? I think we just try to replace our office environment at home, obviously with lack of formal clothes, obviously with our own computer, our own Wi-Fi connection, but we're essentially trying to make them like for like, and that doesn't always work, okay? And it doesn't always work because the two environments are different. There's different distractions, there's different externalities, things like that. But I want you to think about, as an employee, what else can you do at home? For instance, your inspiration. In the office, inspiration can be visualized. A lot of people go to the office these days, they put things on the wall and it says, have a great day, or it says smile with every customer, whatever. They have inspiration because they see their co-workers plugging away, typing numbers in. They see people on the phone selling items or whatever. But at home, it's different. Where's that inspiration? So you have to conjure that inspiration. You need to talk with people. You need to figure out how they're being inspired on a day-to-day basis. You need to look at the environment around you and seek inspiration from that. Maybe your kids, who you see on a day-to-day basis now, can be your inspiration. Maybe you need to print out those stickers that say, hey, work harder, smile more, run faster, whatever it is, and put it on the wall. Maybe you need to create an environment that is more inspirational than your typical mundane, boring home working environment. So I think that's key. That's a key aspect to the new work, because the level of inspiration flow from organizations to employees has significantly reduced, because you're seen as a resource. You're not necessarily seen by every organization as someone we need to inspire as much. They should be inspired because they're working from home. It doesn't work like that. Another topic I'd really bring to your attention: development, value, and growth. I think in an organization, when you're sitting in an office environment and people are throwing manuals at you, and you've got a company intranet, and you've got books on the shelves, and you can see the awards that the company has won, there's a certain amount of value that's easy to quantify, and you're more willing to ask for opportunities to grow. So you're more willing to ask for pay rises. You're more willing to ask to do courses that the company sends you on. You're more willing to ask for horizontal movements within the organization because you want to change team. And because working from home during COVID is naturally associated with people keeping their jobs, you need to rethink that. You still need to have those conversations with your HR. You know, hi, I'm thinking about doing a marketing course. Can the company endorse me? Can the company sponsor me? I'm not happy with this particular team in my company. I think I'm ready for a promotion. Can I move horizontally to this team? There's an opening there, etc. And when you're working from home, that new work, you have to be slightly more proactive because you're working from home than you would in the office. So think about your development value. Think about, even though I'm not in an office environment, how am I going to grow? And how's my value going to increase? Because you don't want to be just another regular cog working from home who people only see once or twice a day on a meeting screen. You still want to be in people's face. You still want to be value in people's face. You still want to show that you're growing as an employee. And I think that's completely critical. Now let's just take it a bit aside from the whole employee-centric or from the whole employer organization mold for a bit, but look at the idea of flexibility. Maybe working from home gives you flexibility to do other things. So for instance, when you're in an office, you would pretty much be crazy or stupid if you're doing your day-to-day job and you're on Amazon selling products, okay? But if you construct a scheduled environment from home where your work productivity is not decreasing or it's flat or going up, there is flexibility to do other things. There's flexibility to freelance, there's flexibility to do your own business, there's flexibility to learn another course, another degree, there's flexibility of helping your peers in ways that maybe you traditionally couldn't help them. If you were working 9 to 5 and they were working 9 to 5, maybe you can come to an arrangement where you work 7 to 3 and they work 10 to 7. You know, there's different levels of flexibility because you're at home, because you have access to that screen, because you have access to a familiar environment all the time. And the longer COVID lasts, or these lockdowns last, the more you should think about this is, what are the optimal times that I'm working? And am I actually doing the optimal amount of work? So I had a lot of friends of mine who, or one friend of mine in particular, she's a baker and she does her 9 to 5. She used to do a 9 to 5. She used to come home, relax for a couple of hours and she'd bake 7 to 10. Then she'd go to sleep. Now her pattern is completely shifted. She still works roughly about 8:30 to 5, 8:30 to 6, but she takes chunks of her day to prepare her dough. She takes chunks of her day to let it set, to bake, whatever. And as long as that process doesn't have a net negative impact on your work, I don't see why you can't do it. So think about flexibility in terms of working from home. The other really key point, which I really want people to touch on today, is high tech, high touch. A lot of people don't talk about it. I think it's incredibly important. And we're going to talk about this quite a lot in this slide about relationship management. So the question is, how optimal are your relationships functioning? Okay, so there's two types of relationships the majority of people have, professional and the second one is personal. So on the professional side, is working from home optimizing my relationship with my peers? You know, are we managing relationships properly? Are we using technology properly? Are we maintaining productivity? Are we getting the recognition we deserve? So traditionally, how would you go about this? You'd go to your office, you probably request a meeting with your boss. You'd say, you look, boss, I think I deserve a pay rise. I've done well this year, or I'm finding work hard, etc. The same applies in a working from home environment. You have to make time for those feedback loops. You have to make time to spend enough energy with managers, with staff, to understand their feelings. And there can't be an assumption that, you know, the same relationships you had in the office are going to carry through whilst you're working from home. There's a lot more harder work that needs to be done. So make time, maybe book a meeting with your peers, a virtual meeting with your peers, just to have a chat. You know, it could be at lunchtime, it could be during a coffee break, just to understand what they're going through, how the kids, how did you find that project? Did you read that memo? Did you do that? Try to foster and maintain that relationship. And using technology, of which there is an abundance now, right? The relationship doesn't have to be a chat. It doesn't just have to be a video. It can be a voice note. It can be on Slack or a team building community type thing where everyone is visible and everyone is transparent to what everyone is saying, but there's an engaging effort for everyone to get in touch with each other and promote communication. Your relationship with your manager needs to be redefined. You need to be able to tell your manager, look, remember in the office, we used to go for coffee every Friday. We can't do that anymore, but why don't we just replace the coffee session with a virtual coffee? Or why don't we replace the coffee session with, you know, a specific email exchange that or summary that we do every Friday or every Thursday. So think about your relationship with your manager, and managers should think about their relationships with their employees. Don't assume because they're at home that they're happy. Don't assume that they have nothing to say just because they're not in front of you in the office space. So think about that professional relationship and how it's really building or how it's growing in this new normal. In the same way you use social media to communicate with friends overseas, in the same way you use Instagram to communicate with random people you don't know, find your technology medium or find your happy balance and think about how you're communicating with your peers and maintaining relationships that are mandatory to productivity at work. Okay, it's really critical. And for those of you in a sales background, even more so, because you're client facing. You need to speak to your clients. You need to speak to your support staff. You need to be on a plane where actually there's minimal interference from working from home or working from anywhere. You can't have that face-to-face conversation, yes, but you can try to replicate it as close to possible. So think about those things. And there's an interesting fact at the point where 74% of employees don't communicate their concerns with managers. I don't get this at all. I really don't. When you're in a relationship with your partner, a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, we're really quick to communicate. We're really quick to at least get angry or be frustrated or be happy about things. And the same relationship should happen at work. You need to communicate with your managers. Otherwise, your managers won't know what the hell's happening behind the scenes. It's important. On the personal side, now a lot of people have questioned or given me questions about this or asked me questions about this in the last 6 months. It's like, and the usual question I get is, Rish, I like working from home, but I really can't handle being around my friends, family, loved ones all the time. It's taxing. They're distractions. I don't know how to juggle them with my work. I don't know, my relationships have ended. My husband wants to divorce me, etc. It's very, very, very common. And the reality is, the reason why it's common is that first point. We're not used to spending that amount of time with friends and family or people in that locale environment. So we haven't prepared ourselves for it. And for those of you who are living in those environments where you're living with a boyfriend or girlfriend, living with kids, living with pets, living with your grandparents, you need to start to think about actually adding structures in place so that you know and they know when is work time and when is non-work time. And this is of critical importance, because if you don't add those structures, not only will your work probably subside and decline somewhat, the chances are your personal relationships will also decline somewhat, because people don't like to feel ignored. People are asking me, well, Rish is in the room, but he's not talking to me, or he's on the phone all the time, or Jason's in the house, but he hasn't helped cook lunch. And things like that all the time happen. So the communication aspect on the personal side is very, very important. End of the day, your work environment is orientated towards a few things. It's orientated towards being productive. It's orientated towards earning a salary, and it's orientated towards a specific part of your day is taken up by activities. And that is something that you need to relate to your partner, to your family, to whoever's at home, or even if it's your dog or cat. Have that conversation with them, because you need to start drawing boundaries, and the boundary setup and the process setup is very integral to managing these working relationships. And don't assume that they know what you're going through. Don't assume that they know just because you're working from home that they understand what it means. I mean, if I were to talk to, say, as an example, my grandma and my grandpa about working from home, they would not have a clue. They would not have a single clue about the mechanics, stresses, mental health problems associated working from home. They would just think my life's easier because they see me all the time and they're like, well, he's nearby, we can ask him to do this, we can ask him to do that. So have that conversation with them. Explain to them that, look, these are my boundaries, this is my zone, this is when I need to do my work. Other times I'm free to do whatever we want to do or whatever activities we decide. But please respect those boundaries and understand that. And the best way to do that is to have a schedule that is transparent, that everyone is open to and open about. The other really clever trick that I teach people is, if you're really stumbling working from home because of juggling, I don't know, making lunch or juggling the kids, etc., create an environment that closely replicates your office environment, if that made you happy. If it made you happy being in your own cubicle, zoning out from the world, doing your work, try to create an environment that enables that. For instance, you may have a really nice room, office room, nice TV, nice computer, nice chair, whatever. Try to replicate that environment and say that you're going to stick within that environment to help replicate the office experience. I think that's really, really critical. Don't let the distractions invade your circle. Because a lot of people say, well, I'll just do that one time. I'll just do that another time. And then one time becomes 3 times becomes 20 times, and it becomes your routine. And when it becomes your routine, then work isn't your routine. Okay. And for those of you who are self-employed or driving your own business, this is even more critical because your time is your money when you drive your own business. So think about these things and try to communicate as much as possible. And the conversations that sometimes sound stupid or the most simple, like, hey, can we discuss my work routine now that I'm working from home, are actually the most valid conversations to have. And they're the conversations that people need to have to actually drive change and become really adept at optimizing their working from home arrangement. So think about your whole relation management, finding this idea of balance and harmony, and understanding exactly that the nature of the relationships you had before COVID or before you were working from home need to be recalibrated to a working from home environment. That is so super critical. And for those of you who have people around who don't get that, who aren't supportive of that, then you get to really see their kind of true colors, and you get to really reassess that type of relationship. Communication is essential, and companies can go a long way to helping their employees do that by promoting things like communication technology, communications within their organization, but also promoting culture. Okay, so you have a work culture. Now, in an office, a work culture is maybe A to B, A to Z. In a work environment, office culture, that A to Z still needs to be shown and demonstrated down, even in a working from home culture. So your office needs to make efforts to show that whatever culture you had in the office is also relevant, possibly changed a bit, but also relevant to you working from home. That gives you buy-in to the company, makes you loyal, makes you want to stay with the company, and makes them seem like they have your best interests at heart. But you also need to come up with your own personal at-home culture. And that's really, really important. The same way when you're in an office, you wouldn't just barge into your manager's room. You'd knock on his door, you'd maybe send him an email before or WhatsApp him to say, can I have a chat for 5 minutes, or her for 5 minutes? The same way, try to reinstill that home culture with your family, with your friends, with your kids. Guys, if you want to speak to me, WhatsApp me. If you don't want to speak to me, or you can wait to the end of the day, then just wait to the end of the day. Leave a post-it on my door, drop a note under the table, things like that. So create 2 sets of cultures. Ensure that your work office culture, which your organization will create, is being precipitated downwards into your home environment, but then also set up your own home culture. And I think that will help you a lot. This is a bit of a complicated slide, and I want you guys to kind of take it away a bit. But it's essentially a kind of roadmap that enables, or I think enables, people to kind of redefine their own experience or workflow of being a member of staff, of being an employee. Okay, so COVID came in, it threw us all, all over the place, disrupted everything, made us a bit crazy. Now we need to adapt. Okay, and we need to adapt because people's mindsets have changed. Now people don't expect to go into the office all the time. So businesses have to change their mindset. They need to change their processes. They need to change their culture, as we just described. So we're in that adaptation phase. We're in that phase where people need to start understanding, what is it going to be like going forward? Can I adapt? And if I can, how am I going to adapt? And if I can't adapt, how do I go through that circle until I can adapt? Or do I just find a job where I don't really have to adapt and I'm still in the office? So adaptation is an embracing of COVID, an embracing of working from home culture and remote work culture, and understanding how we can optimize that intensely. And it's partly done by the employee and it's partly done by the employer. The majority of it is with the employer. The employer needs to understand how their business will evolve. Their business model will evolve, their value proposition will evolve, their HR processes will evolve, how they performance review you will evolve. All these things will evolve. But it's also the employee's job to tell the employer when they've missed something. So for instance, performance review, the very last point. Last year, I got judged by a certain set of metrics. How often I was in the office, how many sales I did, because my boss saw me every day and was able to judge that Rish is working really hard because I can see him on his 5 screens typing away. Well, what do I do in 2021? I can't see Rish. I only have his sales numbers and I only have his logins on the computer. Well, the processes need to change. My boss needs to now be made aware that there are other things that I'm doing, or there are other mechanisms that I'm trying to do that will help him judge me going forward. So the interaction between employer and employee is really, really critical. And don't take it for granted that employers will adapt straight away. They're just human beings. They've also never faced this type of threat, this type of crisis scenario, the same way employees have faced. So they're getting used to it. And the best way for them to evolve is feedback loops, telling them things they've missed, and it being a collaborative organizational effort. And HR go a long, long way to doing that. Employee safety and well-being, I think this is a pretty obvious point. If you're working in an office, you'd always want to be in the most safe, mentally well-being location, a place that promotes positive well-being, and a place that is physically safe for you. And sometimes at home, you have the rights to ask that from your employer. So ask for the blue screen technology that stops your eyes getting hurt. Ask for a better chair. And if company rules are flexible enough and companies are as progressive as they say that they're going to be, maybe your employer will help you go through that. And that's another point of redefining the employee experience. It's a way of making the employer think that they have some impact within your home environment. Maybe you don't have the best Wi-Fi. Maybe have that conversation with your HR. Maybe have that conversation with your manager saying, how can we make it optimal? I want to take on more work, but I just don't have bandwidth to do it. Design thinking. This is a really important point to me personally. I think everyone needs to redefine their processes. So we talked earlier about redefining your mindset. This is more about redefining your processes, about how you interact with people and how you promote ideas, create ideas, handle projects. So think outside the box. There's a multitude of new technologies out there that help you plan projects, that help you plan tasks, that make it visible for others to see what you're doing, that make it visible to others to actually see the specific task you're doing at that moment. So think about those processes, increase discourse and dialogue with your colleagues, and create your own virtual organizational environment. This is really, really critical. So in the same way, if any of you are gamers, you are a gamer and you have your friends who are in the gaming world, or for those of you who love to be on Reddit and you have your own Reddit threads, or you have your Facebook groups, try to replicate the same thing, but from an organizational environment, so that you have your own little metaverses within your organization that allows you to communicate with your employees, your peers, that allows you to create things using different technologies, that allows you to promote dialogue, etc. And if those things are uniform and come together, the company will progress and make a lot of money. Redefine success. Now, we're around the mid-year mark, so a lot of you will be doing kind of performance half-yearly reviews, and a lot of you will be doing budgets for next year coming forward. It's really important that we get to grips with how we're judging our employees as they work from home. And I talked about this a few minutes ago, but have clarity when you start this whole working from home thing, or if you know it's going to continue for another 1 or 2 years, have clarity about how your organization, how your manager, how your HR are going to judge you. And the best way of doing this is to ask for things like scorecards. Ask for clarity, transparency, written clarity and transparency as to what is going to be the criteria with which I'm going to be judged by the end of the year. Because a lot of the time in a physical office, we can go to our manager's office and we can go to her and we can say, look, bang, there's a pile of work, I've done it, judge it. And the visual impression of that is significant. It's one of the reasons why people like sending emails really, really late at night, because it makes them look like they're doing work, when actually maybe that work within the email may have been done at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we need to understand how we're being judged, the criteria, how we're being judged, and our manager's view on what's going to constitute promotions, better scores, bonuses, things like that. So define your success early on and have difficult conversations. Have the conversation which starts, well, look, in the office, you could see me doing A, B, C, D, and G. Now you can only see the end result of A, B, C, D, and G. So am I going to be judged on what? I want clarity on this. I want to understand so that I can make my work from home experience more optimal. I can make my work from home experience more successful for me. And they should have their own criteria, and they should be able to kind of navigate you and help you write a narrative on that process. So I think those things are important. And as you can see, if you do those things, you're actually redefining your entire experience as an employee working from home. you're starting to think of things that traditionally you wouldn't have thought about in the office, and you're cultivating a personality for yourself at home, which is really, really important, because some of us have the personality that we can show the work we're doing. We're very, we're very direct. We're very confident about that, but some of us are not. And the ones who aren't so confident, the ones who are more introvert and kind of hide behind the scenes or stay in the background a bit more, tend to not get their work recognized as much, even more so when they're working from home. Okay, so start to outline with your organization, with your employees, with your managers, exactly what is your success criteria, and try to pursue that. Before we go into some questions, just a few final thoughts. I think one of the important things I think people need to understand and get to grips with is their own views on working from home. So as we saw on the Ferris Bueller video, we've all gone from this phase where working from home was a bit of a luxury and we really wanted it because it just got us away from the office, right? It's a bit like when we take vacation, we just love that period because it was a physical move away from the office. But now we're in this type of environment where working from home is normal, it's common, it's probably going to be pretty long lasting. We need to understand how do we like that and what's our views on that and whether we can fit that into our lives going forward. Because if this becomes a career transition and you're working from home permanently, like someone like me might be doing, I need to understand about whether I'm ready to embrace all the pressures and stresses that come from working from home. I need to understand whether the people I employ are ready for that. I need to also understand that, hey, you know what? One day someone might come to me and say, Rich, well, you need to go to the office for board meetings, for management meetings, to sign things. Am I in a right frame of mind to do those things? So you need to start asking yourselves, what type of player are you? Are you someone who's ready to work from home in the long term and put together the structures in place to optimize your experience? Or are you someone who just wants a bit of a hybrid, working from home as well as working from the office, and clearly communicate that to your managers, to your staff, if you're managing staff, and to your HR. And this is primarily for those of you in the audience who are HR staff. This is something that I think is going to be a big golden nugget for you guys in the next 6 to 9, 12 months. Understanding the optimal points of working from home for staff is really, really critical. And a lot of that goes back to the psychology and the personality of the individual. Don't assume we know what it's like for everyone to work from home. We need to ask those questions. We need to get feedback. We need to get some level of response or clarity from people about how they feel about working from home. And our job as HR or senior managers is to make as good an environment to get the best out of the individual and hence get the best out of the company. So think about the psychological personality side of things. I hope this has given you a bit more of clarity on kind of working from home and some of the struggles of working from home. Look, it's just like being in the office. You're going to have really, really good days and you're going to have really, really bad days working from home. It's just about whether you're in control of those good days and bad days. I think that's really, really critical. And if there's a slide that I want you guys to remember, think about the relationship management slide. Think about interacting with those around you, both professionally and personally, and share. We've never been in an environment where we've worked at home or worked from anywhere this much. So share, get feedback, and try to make the best decisions based on the scenarios that you've been given. And more importantly, from a mental health standpoint, don't feel like you're the only one going through. Reach out to the likes of us at Trynkle, reach out to others, your managers, your HRs, to try to get some understanding if there are pressures, stresses involved, so that we can help you navigate it. Because I guarantee whatever you're going through, someone else is going through. And if they're not, then we just need to dissect the situation and move on from there. So hopefully it's been a helpful talk. If anyone has any questions, we can now take them. Feel free to leave them on the chat, or if anyone wants to come online, feel free to ask the questions. Let me just share my screen again. Let's see.
All right, we have a question from Samantha Chan. How do I manage my partner and work privacy when I am working from home? She wants to know everything. Great question there, Samantha.
It's a really good question. Look, it's a relationship management question and a relationship question. So a lot depends on the nature of your relationship with your partner. But one of the interesting things I find when I speak to couples in particular who are both working from home, or one person's working from home and the other's watching, is there's this immediate need and lust to know everything that the partner is doing. So he's on the computer from 9 to 5, and she's coming and she's like, oh, who are you messaging? What's this presentation about? Why has this number gone down? And, why have you used this color and not that color? Why is the logo like this? It can become a bit intoxicating and it can become a bit frustrating. So it goes back to drawing boundaries, okay? I am in a field where, a lot of my work is private because I deal with clients sharing private matters. So I naturally wouldn't be able to share that to kind of any partner of mine. But my partner may not know that. So I have to articulate that. I have to be able to show them and draw boundaries and tell them, hey, look, these things are kind of off the table and these things are on the table. And, you're going to get a variety of reactions from that. But I think given the nature and the strengths of your relationship, you should be in a position to communicate those type of privacy issues back to your partner in an adequate way. And I think it goes back to an initial point I make of, yeah, you're working from home. Yeah, you're next to your bed. Yeah, you've got a cookie jar next to you, but you are working, okay? The same way your partner, your husband or wife wouldn't stroll into your office and say, hey, show me what you're doing. It's exactly the same type of boundaries that need to be constructed, maybe not as severely, but still need to be constructed to ensure that you have some divide between your work and your private life. And that's a really, really important thing to manage. Try to construct a work persona for yourself at home, because it works both ways, right? As much as you might become a cool, loving partner who shares everything, blah, blah, blah. One day when you go back to the office, you may make the same mistake. You may share information that you shouldn't be sharing. You may just print stuff out on the printer that no one else was supposed to see, but you're so comfortable doing it in your home environment that it escaped into your on-office environment. So think about the relationship, communicate, and be transparent. I think the other thing, look, partners, it's a journey for both of them, right? I mean, we've talked about this very much so from a partner perspective, an employee perspective. Well, believe me, there's a lot of stress coming and going into partners, seeing their husbands, seeing their wives, seeing their boyfriends, girlfriends, kids, grandchildren working from home, because they can't actively help that situation. They can't do the work for you. All they can do is pass comments, pass judgments. Oh, you look stressed, drink some milk. Here's some tea for you. Oh, let me give you a massage, whatever it is. But they're not doing the work for you. So the stress is definitely two ways. The best way of countering that is to be transparent and open about it and dedicate time to each other. I think that's really, really important. I think one of the reasons people ask a lot of work-related questions, well, I've seen this in the past, where people have come to me and said, oh, what are you doing at work? What's this? Why are you writing that? Who's that? Blah, 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 is because we really haven't been that transparent, or they don't have anything else going on in their life that they want to be involved. So create things, create activities, and find a happy mechanism for both of you. Any other questions from anyone?
Right, great question. Great answer to that, Samantha. I hope that answered your question. Personally, for myself, I think throughout listening to the whole thing, he really hit the point on the nail. Like, working with your spouses is a bit more challenging for me personally. I mean, but I think you have given the answer really, which communication is key. Hey, my partner, I have some stuff I can't take my mind off. I need to concentrate on this. Basically, the communication wise, because I'm afraid, like, what if my partner gets angry because I say, hey, sorry about that, I got to do my own work. So I think it's really, really key. What I have to take away from this is really communication again. Be it your partners, be it your employers and stuff. The communication is really key. And thank you for that.
No, thanks. I mean, I just got another question. There's one final question which I got on my LinkedIn, which is related to my boss wants me to go back to the office, but I'm not ready to leave my work from home environment. Okay. This is a good question. Okay. Because a lot of us have got so accustomed and used to working from home that actually maybe we're not prepared to go back out into the real world and sit in an office and do those things. And obviously, if you're doing your own businesses and you're doing side projects and you're spending time with your kids and taking them to schools, it's another recalibration that you want to do. The end result is if your employer demands it of you, you probably have to do it. What I would suggest is having a conversation with your employer to say, look, my routine has changed so much that I want to kind of ease into it. I want to find a happy medium where I can work kind of a few days from home or a few days in the office. But it's definitely something people need to think about. I mean, look, working from home came about dramatically because of the pandemic. Don't be surprised if that goes away just as fast as it came, okay? And what you don't want to be is you don't want to be in a position where you're so comfortable working from home now that one day someone says, bang, come to the office, and you're like, oh, where's my skirt, where's my blazer, where's my notepad, whatever. You need to be prepared for that, because I'm a believer that it will eventually go back to some level of normality, purely because working from home isn't as collaborative now as it possibly could be, right? So think about those things, communication again, and try to create what I would call a hybrid environment. And I think that's what we should all be trying to aim for going forward. A hybrid environment of, maybe not in the office, but teamwork somewhere. So a collaborative setting where we work with people, as well as working from home. And I think ultimately that's the best to get out of anything. So that would be my answer to that particular question. And thanks. If anyone's got anything to ask me privately, I know it's a bit of a personal topic as well, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or via the website. And thanks for joining. I appreciate it. And hopefully people took some getaways from it.
All right, I guess that's the end of the session right now. Really appreciate your time, Rish, for sharing the everything. For me, I mentioned again the key takeaways, the communication. I hope all of you here have actually benefited from this session greatly. For this, right, I will be sharing the recording to all of you via your emails. And before we end this session, right, I think maybe we can give Rish a thanks by typing in thanks or something, right? Thank you so much for sharing this and for your time. I know you're really busy and actually took time to actually share this knowledge with us. Rish, actually, I've just one last question also before we end this.
Sure.
I know like a lot of people work from home right now. There's actually a lot more time, like the baker that you mentioned earlier. Personally, I find, yeah, actually for convenience, right, I don't have to travel a lot. But I feel that I want to earn more income, earn a side income, like basically getting a side hustle or stuff. I know that you're sharing something on this, right? It's called the slashy culture. Could you quickly elaborate what this is all about?
Yeah, sure. So working from home obviously created a comfort zone for people. And in the comfort zone, people could kind of do their work whenever they wanted to do. So they had more free time during the day or even at nights, and they started taking these side hustles, right? So what has developed over time now is actually you're not just a person with one role. For instance, you can be an accountant, you can be a baker, you can be a dog walker, you can be a gymnast, right? And some of those jobs you get paid, some of those jobs you don't get paid. The side hustles, obviously, you get paid. So when you're working from home, and look, I'm not trying to tell you guys to do anything against your employer, but think about how optimal your time is. Because if your working from home environment has created an environment where you can get through the same amount of work in either a shorter period of time or spread out through the day, then you're opening up other time zones and other time frames for you to pursue personal pursuits of yours. And the same way the baker went on to do her own baking business on Instagram, the same way maybe someone wants to do a degree, maybe the same way someone wants to sell stuff on Shopee or Lazada or whatever it is. And it's important that you are always structured and you're organized and you know exactly what you're doing. Otherwise, there's just going to be too many things on your plate. But it's definitely an angle for people to do. I think in one of my slides, there was a statistic that, in a few years' time, over 70% of the world population are going to be freelancers. What does that mean? It means that they're not attached to an organization. Okay, so the whole working environment is changing, where people are doing multiple jobs, multiple contract roles, side hustles, slashy culture, etc. And people like that because they like the idea that they can be more than just one thing, right? Not just an accountant, not just a baker, not just a marketing expert. They can be all of those things. So think about how you go about it. Make sure it doesn't compromise your own mental and physical health and your relationships around you. But it's definitely an angle that people can look into.
Right, and you do have a session in this. I've dropped the link down. All of you, I mean, if anyone can definitely sign up using the link. It's again by Rish again. It's a really interesting topic. Me personally myself, I would like to, I'm enjoying in to listen how we can adapt to this slashy culture and maybe earn a side income and stuff. Right. Thank you so much, Rish, once again. Appreciate your time here today. All right. That's it. I'll be sharing the slide at the end to connect with Rish on your social media channel. Right.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone, and stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe.